Today we're going to talk about how to read a dial caliper. We're going to be using this Brown and Sharp 6-inch long, inch measuring dial caliper. This unit has 1/1000th of an inch increments and a 100,000ths per revolution dial. Now that's super common. Most of our dial calipers are going to have 100,000ths of an inch per revolution, but there are still some available that have 200,000ths per revolution. None of them that I'm going to show you today are that way. They're all 100,000ths per revolution. So what we're looking at is, how does this tool take a measurement, and how does it take a precise measurement? First, let's understand what we're focusing on. This simple illustration seems to help a lot of folks. We've got these 4 boxes. We've got a decimal point here. We are going to live, breathe, and speak in this 1/1000ths of an inch position. This is our 1/1000ths of an inch position. We're measuring 1/1000th of an inch at a time with this dial. So we have 4 digits that we're going to measure with this tool. This being a 6-inch long caliper, we're not going to measure more than 6 whole inches. The first 2 numbers are going to come from the frame. The second 2 numbers are going to come from this dial. So these first 2 digits right here are going to come from the measurement on our frame. The last 2 digits are going to come from the measurement on our dial. Let's have a look at what this one is, for example. As we look at the pieces of the caliper, this fixed frame has a scale on it, and it has some larger numbers. Usually they're also a little bit higher than the rest. 0, 1, 2, 3, and so on. And then in between each of those, we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. Each of these larger and higher numbers are whole inches. Each of these smaller numbers are 100,000ths of an inch, or 0.1. So some folks like to imagine that there's a little decimal point between each of these small numbers to help them remember which position they fit in here. So let's look at what we've got on this reading. 0, 1, 2, 3. We see 3 whole inches identified on the frame. To take our measurement, we're going to look at where this movable jaw, wherever that closes up, we're going to look at where this movable jaw lines up with the frame, and we look at this area right here and how much is exposed. So it's open past the 3 inches. We're just looking at this area right here. We're open past the 3 inches. So there's our 3 whole inches. And then we look at how many numbers past the 3. 1, 2, we're open past the 2. So we've got 3.2, 3 inches, 200,000ths. Here on our paper, 3 inches, 200,000ths, or 3.2. Our last 2 digits are going to come from this dial right here. So as we look at this, we see, what does the dial tell us? This needle is pointing past the 40, before the 50. So we're at 40, 45, 46, 47, and it's actually about halfway between the 47 and the 48. So we're going to go with 47 thousandths. So 3 inches, 247 thousandths. 3 inches, 247 thousandths, or 3.247. All right, let's look at another one. We're going to put these boxes here. Let's just stop right there. So we look at the frame of the caliper, and we see 1 inch, 2 inches, and then we see a number 1 right here. It's open past the number 1. The frame is open past the number 1, so 2.1 is going to be our first 2 numbers. 2.1. Then we look at what number does the needle on the dial measure. There's 20, 25, 26. Each of these lines is 1/1000th of an inch. So we're measuring 26 thousandths. That 26 is going to go in our last 2 boxes. 2 inches 126 thousandths, or 2.126. All right, let's try another one. Now, if you're just learning how to read calipers or micrometers, these boxes may help you to keep track of what you're writing down. If that helps you, great. If not, ignore it and just write the numbers down. Let's look at something that will often trip people up a little bit, especially when they're just learning how to read a caliper. Remember, the first 2 digits are going to come from the frame. The second 2 digits are going to come from the dial. What we need to look at is, where does this movable jaw, this section of the movable frame, where does this moving section line up with the frame on the caliper? We see 1 whole inch, and we see 900 thousandths. Here's where it gets tricky. We physically can see the number 2. This edge of the frame is right at that line. However, this needle is not open past the 0. So much like looking at an analog clock, as we see the numbers moving closer to the hour, this would be, if you were imagining minutes, this would be 2 minutes before the hour. So it's before the 2 inches. So we can't use that 2 in our whole inches position. So we are currently at 1 inch, 900, or 1.9, 1.9, and then our second 2 digits, the last 2 digits here, come from this dial. So we see we've gone all the way around 90, 95, 96, 97, 98. 1 inch, 998 thousandths. 1.998. Our numbers that are really high in the 90s, close to the next 100 thousandths, are going to be very, very close to this line on the frame. So we've always got to pay special attention to, is it open to that 2? We have to look at where this needle is. If that needle is just past the 0, let's open just a little bit past the 0. Now this doesn't look very much different on the frame right here. The edge of the movable jaw is still right at that 2. Let's put our boxes here again. Decimal point. Let's look at what happens here. We've got 2 whole inches. We don't have any 100 thousandths though. It's just 2 inches. So there's 2 inches and 0 100 thousandths. So we've got to put a 0 here in this second place. Then as we look at this dial, let's count how many lines the needle is past the 0. 1, 2. That 2 does not go here. It's 0, 2, because it's less than 10. We don't have any 10s. So it's 0, 2. 2.002. 2.002. We have to be very careful that we don't put this 2 in this position. All right? If we had 2 inches and 20 thousandths, 2.020, that would be over here. This measurement would be 2.020. All right, see the difference? Now let's look at how this looks with a different caliper. So we use the Brown and Sharp caliper. Let's use our Starrett number 120 caliper. Notice we have some more reflection on the bezel. So I'll try to be careful about how I hold it. Still an excellent tool. This is a fantastic tool. I really like the dark colored face with the white numbers. They really stick out well. It's just a reflection issue for the camera that makes it a little bit tricky. So again, I'm going to draw our 4 boxes. We're going to have some number of whole inches, even if it's a 0. We're going to have some number of hundred thousandths, even if it's a 0. And then we're going to have 2 digits here. One of them may be a 0, and we have to pay special attention as to which place that goes in. So we look at how many whole inches is this open. So we have our number 1. So on the Starrett, the scale is written down here. The Brown and Sharp, it's up here. It still reads the same way. We have 1 whole inch, 2 whole inches, and then 0.1, 0.2, 0.3, 0.4, 0.5, 0.6, 0.7, 0.8. 2 inches, 800 thousandths, 2.8. Those go in our 2.8. And then we look at the dial. We are at 40 thousandths, 2.840. 2.840. 2 inches, 840 thousandths, 2.840. 2 inches, 840 thousandths. All right, same situation as earlier. If we are slightly before the 0, here we have a reading of 2 whole inches. We can see the number 9, but it's not open to the number 9 because that needle is not past the 0. So we have 2 inches, 800, 2.897. So we have 90, 90, 95, 96, 97. 2.897. Two inches, 897 thousandths. So you've got to be really careful. We can fully see that number 9 right there. That number 9 is very clear. We can see it completely as we line up the movable jaw to the frame of the caliper, but the needle is not past the 0. Once the needle moves past the 0, then we get a situation like this where we still see the 2.9. Now the needle is past 0, so it's physically reading that number 9 digit now. 2.9. Now remember, what we see on the dial, we've not gotten to 10 yet, so we start with a 0. 02. 2 inches, 902 thousandths, or 2.902. How do we say it? We can say it as thousandths, 2 inches, 902 thousandths, or we can say 2.902 inches. All this information is for a inch reading dial caliper. Every inch reading dial caliper that I've ever had in my entire life is graduated in 1/1000th of an inch increments. Maybe something else exists, but that's every single one that I've ever seen. They'll say right on the dial, 0.001. That means the distance between each of these little lines is 1/1000th of an inch. All right? I hope that helps. If the boxes help you, start by drawing out those boxes. Put your decimal point in between the first and second box and realize that wherever you're at, your first 2 digits are going to come from the frame. In this case, we've got 3 inches, 300, 374 thousandths. 3 inches, 374 thousandths, or 3.374. 3 inches, 374 thousandths. 3 inches, 374 thousandths. Again, we can see that number 4 a little bit, but the needle's not up to the 0 yet, so we're not actually reading that 4. All right? Hope that helps.